what happened with Peter. Was it maybe when we did John? I think when we did John, we did Peter. We talked about Peter. We didn't compare it to the other Gospels, but we just did where it talked about the Peter incident in John. But so anyway, we will do Peter all at one thing, so we can make sure and compare what the different Gospels say. And I was also, I think this is especially good since this group is here. Let's talk about the harmony of the Gospels and whether it's good or bad, or what's the deal with one Gospel writer saying one thing and one saying another. We know that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were not all with Jesus when these things were happening. Who was with them? Matthew?
When do you mean now?
Was Matthew with Jesus when all these things were happening? Is it an eyewitness account from Matthew?
I would venture to guess, not knowing well enough, that yes, it probably was, because wasn't he recording most everything that Jesus said?
Well,
So-
he had his inner circle. That usually were there
Was
for
Matthew part of
everything.
the inner circle?
Mhm.
So then Mark?
John, for sure.
John, yeah.
John, yes, but what about Mark and Luke?
Sure about Mark. And Luke, he was later, right? I mean, he
Right.
wasn't
I think
there.
Mark was later too.
Right. Yeah.
There's one other one that was later, and we went through those, and I don't have the little paper that we have with the four, but the point is that two of them weren't really in the inner circle or with them, but they were with someone who was, and they were writing down based on that. And it's interesting how the one who was with all of them, John, and he writes the latest, and he's the one who has the most that he adds. He doesn't contradict anything that's said by anyone else, but he adds more to it, which makes a lot of sense. So when we look at the harmony of the Gospels in relation to Peter, is it likely that everyone knew the same thing about what happened to Peter? Probably not. Two of them weren't necessarily there. Two of them were there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why when we do Peter, we're going to see that certain ones have more to say about what happened with Peter because they saw those things that happened. The others don't necessarily have as much.
A stupid question here, but, well, I mean, the harmony of the Gospels is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Sean.
Yes?
Why are we talking about Peter?
Oh, I'm sorry. Peter was one of the disciples.
Yeah.
So he denied Christ during this episode where Christ was being brought to Caiaphas for judgment and all that. Peter denies him 3 times and the cock crows. So that's why the whole story of what happened with Peter and his denial is in the Gospels.
Oh.
He wrote a book. He wrote 2 books, first and second Peter, right? So he wrote, but he also is depicted within the Gospels because of the whole denial and the cock crows and whatever all that.
But were the other apostles there though when he denied?
Yeah.
I don't
We're gonna,
I think
there
they were all
were.
warming up at the fire.
We're at different stages, so we're gonna go through it now, and they're gonna skip the part where Peter is totally involved, and we're just gonna look at what happens with Jesus, and then we'll come back and put all the Peter pieces back together afterwards. Okay. So last week we talked about this Eastern Golden Gate. So look at that dome that's there. What is that dome?
Dome of the Rock.
Is that supposed to be there? No, it's not supposed to be there.
No.
Get that out of there.
Yeah, that wasn't there when they were there. that's
That
for
wasn't
sure.
there when they were there. So I want to make sure, but one of the ways we do recognize that that's the Temple Mount is because that dome is so easy to spot, right? So this would be taken from Gethsemane looking back at the Temple Mount. So when they were up on Gethsemane, it's not like it's a deep forest and they can't see out of it. They can see where they are and they can see the temple area. The Garden of Gethsemane is situated at the western base of the Mount of Olives in East Jerusalem, right on the edge of the Kidron Valley. Rather than being separate locations, Gethsemane is a specific location of land that sits on the lower east slopes of the Mount of Olives. So it's a specific place there. So we read this last time. As Jesus and his disciples passed the temple platform's eastern or Golden Gate, crossed the Kidron Valley, and began their ascent up the Mount of Olives toward the Garden of Gethsemane. Back here, do you see the way that gold shimmers and shines? Well, the eastern gate was golden. So they would have seen, just like we're looking at that and saying, oh, it's so easy to see, they would have seen that golden gate. The spring festival of Passover always begins on the 14th day of the lunar month of Nisan with a full moon rising in the eastern sky. And I just really love this picture because I feel like, okay, right, the setting is kind of an eerie setting. Have you seen a red moon like that, a blood moon? Yeah. So even just a regular old full moon can give you that kind of look or feeling. It has a different feeling to it. So this is the atmosphere that they're in when this all is happening. So we're going to start here, and what I did is the place that's shaded are the ones that say the exact same words as one of the others. So instead of saying the exact same thing, but like here, we have a section of Mark and a section of Luke. Luke adds a little bit of different detail, but Matthew is exactly the same as Mark. So there's no use in reading it all over again. So let's read through this Mark passage. Look, it says Mark 14:26 and 32 to 42. See the way there's some verses skipped there? Those are the verses like that have the thing about Peter, what's happening with Peter. So we're skipping those parts. Okay, so Mark 14, verse 35. Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible the hour might pass from him. Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Simon, he said to Peter, are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. What were you noticing, Eve?
No, nothing. I just, guys, can't you stay awake for just a minute?
Careful. God is going to teach you a lesson, Eve. I'm just speaking from experience. The moment I say I think that way about someone in the Bible, in other words, then God teaches me something, and they're not fun lessons to learn. So Matthew says just about the same thing. Luke says, when he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. Now that I really do understand. It's not like they were not attentive, but this has been a tumultuous time. The dinner that they had, the whole speech that Jesus gave, all everything going on.
Yeah.
I could see why they would be exhausted from it.
Them not knowing, not understanding.
Yeah.
And emotionally drained.
Yeah. And then here's Jesus. Jesus says, why are you sleeping? He asked them. Get up and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. So Jesus gets this thing that's coming. All the disciples understand is that this is really hard. Something really bad is about to happen. This isn't good the way it's going. And they're exhausted from it. So the guys were exhausted from sorrow. And Jesus knows they need prayer more than they need sleep. He knows what they are about to face. They are unaware, although they have been fearful of what is coming. They don't really understand what is ahead of them. Have you ever felt that way? Like you know what's coming, but you're just afraid of how it's going to all work out?
Yeah.
Dread. Mm-hmm. It's exhausting. So what is the answer to dread?
My favorite word.
Go for it.
Trust.
Right. Why is trust so key here? Here for them and for us when we are in similar, we can't see what's on the other side. We just feel this dread. So what is it that trust does for us?
It relieves you of that. It should relieve you of that dread, because if you're going to trust in the Lord, you know He's going to take care of it.
The key being in the Lord, right? Because sometimes we put our trust in other people,
Oh, now, that's not
other-
what I mean when I say that word.
But the
Let me
other
make that perfectly clear.
other institutions,
Yeah.
you know, the somebody that we think is so holy, you know, somebody we respect and so we have to be careful that we're putting our trust in the right place. So if we have that dread about what's coming, if we can see something coming and we really have that sense of dread, we should probably ask ourselves, who are we putting our trust in? Ourselves? Like if it's in, I'm going to be able to handle this, and then I realize I can't handle it, then I'm going to get this dread, right? So we've got to make sure we're putting our trust in the right place. Now, does it help to trust God for something that you're doing that's sinful or wrong?
Not sure I understand your question.
In other words, we put our trust in Christ because whatever it is belongs with Christ, belongs with God. There are some things we need to do, some things we're told to do that we may not like to do very much, like refusing to participate in sin. And we may dread having to be the one to walk away or to politely exit ourselves or whatever. We have a dread about that. So where's the trust there?
Missing.
Right, it feels like it, but the truth is that we should trust that if we do the right thing, God's going to take care of those consequences. Instead of being fearful that people are going to get mad at me or it's going to look bad or whatever, it's embarrassing, whatever it is that, you know.
So what if people get mad at you? The person you don't want to be mad at you is upstairs.
Absolutely, that's where we need to be putting our trust.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go with the arm of flesh, for sure.
So when you get mad at me and I just walk away from you nonchalantly, you'll understand why.
In in the Mark passage, the verse 14:36, he says, Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. Isn't that the kind of trust we're just now talking about? Jesus is saying, is this really the only way that it can be? Is there any other way it can be? But he's putting his trust in God. What Jesus dreaded was not so much death as much, but the manner of his death, as the one who's taking the sin of the world upon himself.
Well, that's the thing we usually dread too, is the torture, what precedes, you know.
We want to
can
die
take
fast.
death,
Let's
but
die fast.
But it's the, you know, the torture or the pain,
The
whatever.
whole thing, yeah.
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 That's what we dread.
But Jesus was God. He knew exactly what was going to happen. In fact, he told them.
The disciples aren't sure what is about to happen, but it seems very scary.
Yeah.
And they've had hints of impending doom from Jesus himself.
Yeah, he's talked about all this persecution and
Yeah.
Do you
You'd
think,
they'd be wanting to pray with them there, you know what I mean?
yeah, do you think they were fearful for themselves?
I don't know if they really sunk in what they were facing.
Like, do they know that Christ is the only one that's going to be crucified? Do they know that?
I don't think they understand that yet.
Or do they think the followers are going to be in danger also?
Well,
He
told
said
them.
there's going to be persecution.
Yeah.
But we hear what we want to hear sometimes.
Right,
you know?
and when he's saying that, we know because we can look back on history and say the persecution came later, when they, later when they were spreading the message of Christ's resurrection. So and by that time they were ready to face the persecution. At this time, they're the same way. They're thinking, oh no, is this what he was talking about? That we're going to be killed and whatever, and it's right. This is going to happen now.
Maybe he's not talking about us.
Maybe he's
Yeah.
talking about that Peter.
Somebody else.
Look what Peter did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go on in Mark, verse 39. Once more he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. They did not know what to say to him. Look, Matthew said, he went away a second time and prayed, my Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. So what does this tell us about Jesus? Was he some sort of suicidal person? What makes him not just a person experiencing suicidal thoughts?
Because he's divine as well as being human.
He
Is
knew
he,
his
and is he
purpose.
killing himself?
He knew what his purpose was, and that's what
He knew that was his purpose. And he's not killing himself. He's just being a willing sacrifice, like the lamb that goes to the to be sacrificed. Verse 41, returning in Mark 14:41, returning the third time, he said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Enough! The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." In Matthew 26, verse 44, so he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. So he's earnestly seeking God. And what's this deal with the Son of Man? Let's remind ourselves what we know about the Son of Man. Here, I'll give you a hint. Son of Man is used 81 times by Jesus in the Gospels. In Acts 7:56, Stephen uses the term. In Revelations 1:13, John's vision. Daniel 7:13-14 is pictured as a heavenly figure who in the end times is entrusted by God with authority, glory, and sovereign power. In Isaiah 52 to 53, the Son of Man must suffer. So Jesus is the Son of God. Why does he use the phrase Son of Man?
His humanity, he's human, so he's experiencing it as we would.
God's son
You
in a
know.
human body.
God is a man.
The human part.
Yeah.
God's son in a human body.
So what he's experiencing right now is the side of the human body. The part where he's in the heavenly places with God, he's set that aside. So he's being fully human
He's been fully
at this
human.
time. Right now, he became the Son of Man in order to provide redemption for their sin. He was and is still God, just as the Holy Spirit is God. God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. Matthew 28:19, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. So he has to go through this being Son of Man.
Yeah, as a human.
In order for this to work, for him to be the sacrifice for this, he has to
Be one of us.
tie into the Son of Man part. What do you have there, Eve?
Nothing, I'm just writing my notes.
I
Finally caught up with you in my Bible.
yeah, and some places when they use the term Son of Man, it seems like they're talking about like that the person was not, that a person was an earthly person, right? The son of a human.
He's the son of a human,
Yeah.
but then his father was divine.
Yeah.
No, in a way he was.
Pardon?
In a way he was.
Right,
He was
right.
born,
Well, no, he was son of woman, humanly,
born.
but he was son of God, divinely.
Yeah. I think it's kind of a mysterious thing. Since we're doing Genesis, and starting back at the beginning and looking at all these details of the sacrifice and the characters of the people, and I keep thinking, why didn't God give up? Abraham was a jerk. Isaac was, useless.
Be careful what you
Jacob
say.
is a, conniver. They
Yeah. They all had
and we're all
issues.
just as bad. I'm not saying we're better.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, God keeps trying to get this thing done that He's trying to do, and He really has to struggle to find people that are able to follow through. I can see why He had to send His only Son
Yeah.
to do it, because who else could?
And then even his best friends betrayed him
Yeah,
and ran away.
yeah,
I was
You
kind of
did it,
thinking somewhat along those lines, and I guess I expressed that. I guess that was in our today's reading, because we're in Isaiah now a little bit, and it's just time after time. God's talking to His prophets, and it's like what am I gonna do
Look
with
at
these people?
They just won't listen.
Yeah.
And I think that's what was so helpful when we did it in our Sunday school class, because we could see the time go by. And that's what's hard for me when I'm reading like Isaiah 6 chapters, and it says, and this king did this and this, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. And then it's 100 years later, but it sounds like, and then so-and-so did, but there's actually a lot of time that was spent there, which would drive me crazy if I was God. Like, when are we going to get this done? I can't find someone who will be righteous their whole life. Even David, how do you get somebody that's going to be righteous? If any one of them had been the righteous one, would God have used them instead of Christ?
Maybe. We don't know.
That's one of the things
We
I
do
want to
know.
ask God about, is to say, is the reason you had to go with your son, Christ, and have him become human on earth is because none of these other guys,
Right? He's the only righteous one.
Not one person on this earth is without sin,
right,
but Christ was.
but Christ. And that's why I'm thinking maybe that's why he had to do it that way.
It
That
is.
makes sense.
And he sacrificed his life, not somebody else's,
Gave up,
for our
everything
sins.
to do it for us, to make us righteous by his blood.
Because when we think about in Genesis, when God makes this beautiful Garden of Eden, and sin enters in,
Yeah.
so
it
then
did
they're
long.
cast out. So you think the consequence of being cast out, maybe that'll straighten them up. I feel like it's like a parental problem, like with your kids, maybe not
And he
having will
was the
help them
perfect
just
parent.
right. And eventually it gets so
Till the
bad,
kids are
he
off.
just washes it all with water,
Yeah.
does the
Yeah.
flood, and starts over again. And then
Oh, but I got Noah.
Yeah, they had their
Wrong.
issues too.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And then the people spread all out, and then so he says, okay, well, I'll go with Abraham. We'll go with him. But what a faulty, he's just like us,
Yeah.
And then Isaac and then Jacob. And I'm thinking, no, I can see God's frustration with trying to bring about what he has in mind, which would be back to the Garden of Eden, would be us living and walking with God in the beautiful Garden of Eden. That's the thing he wanted.
And yet they constantly looked up to Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac. They always used that phrase, our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Knowing they weren't perfect, but they still
Well,
looked up
God
to them. They were
used them
still
as best he
heroes to them, I
could.
guess.
God did the best he could to,
Yeah.
bring, and Christ did come through the genealogy. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of feel sorry for God, I guess. I do.
Yeah,
I feel
I had-
sorry that
You would think it'd be very frustrating.
I feel sorry that so many of us have been disobedient. I don't think God minds it so much when we're humble and we recognize that we are doing something wrong, and then we work to change it to be different. And that I feel like if God would accept Abraham, he'll accept me.
Yeah. If they made it in the book.
Yeah. So
Of heroes.
I think the
Yeah.
humility is the key, though, with God, don't you think? It seems to me that that's what pleases him, is when we truly are humble and recognize his.
Well,
His-
you look at it with your kids. The same thing is true.
You still love them, but
You still love them,
you
but
they disappoint you
the one that
sometimes. Yeah.
lashed back at you is the one that you're going to punish,
Mhm.
versus the one who, gosh, Mom, I'm really sorry.
They're all
I'll do
different.
better next time.
Yeah.
I've learned my lesson.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, you get the rebellious, yeah. Well, there's the compliant, the defiant, and the reliant. So you have,
And the deceptive.
Yeah.
and so you get these mixtures. You have to figure out which one they are, and that takes a while.
Well, I'm thankful that God has given us an opportunity to come to him. He didn't have to do that.
That's right.
And by doing what he did, and by Christ being willing to be the sacrifice and being perfect, makes a way for us to be able to enter
Yeah.
into God's presence. So I'm
There was
just
no
really
other way.
thankful for that.
There was no other way.
All mighty God who created everything.
And
He
yes,
comes to earth.
and we treat him like this.
And he does all that on his free will because he loved us that much. That's
You know, he did stuff. You know, people talk about the Lord and that Jesus appeared at different times in history. Then they talk about the angel of the Lord. Some of those they say were Christ. And so, you know, it's not like Christ has not been active in mankind. But in order to do this task, he had to be born here. So, you know, as a child, at what point did he realize that who he was? Did he know from the time he was an infant? When did he actually realize that, or remember, or how did that work?
He kind of let
Well,
people.
he knew all.
At
He
12,
was there
and then-
before,
Yeah.
creation was, so I think he knew.
I'm thinking that there was a certain level of maturity, like when they say, you know, your brain is developing and all. And I think sometime like when he was in the temple
Yes.
and he began to teach in the temple as a young
answering
boy.
the questions that they couldn't
Right.
answer. And
I think that's when he, you know, because if you go from being an infant, his brain isn't even back together, right?
But wait a minute, you're talking about somebody that's God.
But he became man.
I know, but he's still God.
But as a man, he would have to, you know, he didn't, you know, suckle from his mother's breast and say, and let me tell you, Mary,
Yeah.
right? He had to
I'm gonna
like
walk
go
on water.
through, he had to go through being,
Yeah.
and they have maybe that at that, what they call like the age of accountability, is it 12 years old or whatever? Maybe at that time, maybe by then, when his brain and his everything matured.
when he was a teenager,
That's what
he
I'm
was.
thinking.
Remember when he got left behind?
He had to know
They
at
come back and
12.
found him in a temple. And said,
I think that's the importance of that marker, because he said, I have to be about my Father's work.
My father's house.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I love that song on my mother's side, on my father's side.
Oh, yeah,
I love
yeah.
that song.
I don't know that song.
Mary, did you know?
Mary, did
Oh,
you know?
Mary, did you know? Oh, yeah.
Written by
Yeah, that's a
Mark
good one.
Lowry and what's his name? Plays the harmonica. He did the music, and Mark Lowry did the words. Yeah. Anyway,
Oh.
You know what it
it's
takes
a
to play
beautiful
harmonica?
song.
Here.
You gotta be a blower.
Yeah. You're good at that, I hear.
Yeah, he is.
So the arrest, trial, crucifixion, and burial of Jesus is next. So Friday, Saturday of Passion Week, Jesus betrayed, arrested, and forsaken. He's at the Garden of Gethsemane Friday, long before dawn. So Mark 14, verse 43, with him was a crowd armed with swords and clubs sent from the chief priests. Wait, let's start with the John passage. John 18, verse 2. I have written down here, read John, then Mark, then Luke. So,
Yeah.
John 2. Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the garden, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. Okay, Mark adds this part. With him was a crowd armed with swords and clubs sent from the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders. And Luke adds this phrase, Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. You know, not like in John, it almost sounds like he was just with them, guided them. But in Luke, it says he was leading them. So note that Judas was leading them. That's how they knew where to go. What's the deal with torches and with lanterns?
Well, they gotta be able to see it, dark.
Yeah, they don't really
They're
help
not-
you
they're
see
not
much.
gonna do this
I
in the
bet you that
daytime.
full moon is what helps them to see.
Well, they were. you know,
They're not even as good as flashlights
lights.
because if you carry, here's a lantern, the kind that would be a lantern and a torch.
Oh, yes.
So when you carry that, it's shining back at you. You can't. It's hard to see.
It's hard to see ahead.
It's very hard to see. So we know it's a full moon. That they probably could have left the torches aside, but it also makes them seem very dangerous to be carrying fire and torches like that. So in verse 4 and 5, the people couldn't really see if it was Jesus. They couldn't really see, even though he is the one who stepped up and asked, why can't they see? They've got a full moon and torches and lanterns. Because you can't see when the torch is in your face as well.
Yeah.
So it was a very confusing thing.
Flex pen.
So why didn't one of the others say anything or do anything? Why didn't any of the other disciples step up and
What Peter cut the ear off of one of them.
well, later we're going to talk about Peter, but at this point when they come up with for what happens here,
Well, Judas points him out, but he probably couldn't really see him either, maybe.
he probably did
Yeah.
point.
I
Judas
don't
was
think those guys
But he
really
let him
knew.
there. He
I
said,
mean,
"I'll
they
take
didn't
it.
know what was going on.
I'll take
Right.
him right to him, you know.
yeah, but there's a whole
The rest
crowd
of
of them.
them
So
didn't
who
know.
is he, right?
Mhm.
Okay, well then this next passage says how he does it. Let's start with John. I am he, Jesus said, and Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, who is it you want? Jesus of Nazareth, they said. Jesus answered, I told you that I am he. If you are looking for me, then let these men go. This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. I have not lost one of those you gave me. Remember that was in John 6:8. So Mark, in his portion, he says, now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard. Going at once to Jesus, Jesus said, Rabbi, and kissed him. Luke says, he approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Notice in the John passage, he says, I am he. So those the exact words in the Greek is I am, which is part of
Which would
that.
trigger.
You're right, right. So in John 6:38, it says, for I have come down from heaven not to do my will, but to do the will of him who sent me. And this is the will of him who sent me, that I shall lose none of all those he has given me, but raise up at the last day. For my Father's will is that everyone who looks at the Son of Man and believes in him shall have eternal life, and I will raise with them up at the last day. That was Christ's focus. That's probably the thing that got him through this whole thing, was knowing that he's got to be there so that he can bring them through. They're going to believe in him, and he's going to be able to make a way for salvation. Jesus kept his word. Judas chose to betray Christ for 30 pieces of silver. He chose to betray, but Christ did what he could to hold on to him. But it's his choice, just as it is our choice to follow or not. So while Jesus is saying, I've tried to get all of them, I'm keeping all of them, he's trying, the disciples, all those followers, but every single one of them has a choice not to follow, and Judas chose not to. Now, is 30 pieces of silver worth it?
Just the price of a human life. That's
Not for long, because he went out and killed himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't
Well, he
think
tried to take
realized
it
they were
back,
gonna hang
even.
or kill him.
Didn't he take
You think
it
he
back
thought
to
he was going
him
to get
and they-
away from
They
it?
I
didn't
think
want money.
once he realized what was happening,
I
Yeah,
would,
no, but he took the money back too, didn't he?
yeah, to
He
give
tried
it
to
back,
Give it back, and they didn't want to
and
take
they
it.
wouldn't take it.
Yeah. Now it was blood money.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. He was very foolish. Not like us. We would never be that way. Okay, let's read the John passage, 18, verse 10. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus commanded Peter, put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. Okay, that's John. Now let's look at Matthew. Matthew adds in verse 50, Jesus replied, do what you came for, friend. In verse 52, put your sword back in its place, Jesus said to him, for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen this way? And then Luke. When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, Lord, should we strike with our swords? But Jesus answered, no more of this. And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Can you feel the confusion of the moment? In John, we see Peter strike. In Luke, we see the followers ask, should we? That probably happened all at the same time. Lots of scary confusion. And note that Matthew 52 and 54, it's just a very confusing time to be a disciple. What would you have done?
Lord only knows.
I think I would have just watched. I think I would have been so shocked. I don't think I could have said or done anything. I think I just would have been shocked. What especially
he had disappeared before when they came and tried to catch him. He would just kind of disappear in the crowd. He would be gone, and they probably thought he'll do that again. But he didn't. And especially when these guys fall down, he thought, well, he'll
Right.
take care of it. Well.
And he's been telling them, remember all the times that we read where he took them aside and told them what was coming, what was going to be happening? He's told them this.
Yeah.
So, I would be going, he said this was happen. Oh, why do I have to watch this? I don't want to see this. I mean, it would be like that to me. I feel like
The whole reason they came was to go through that.
I don't have to like it.
Not even actually.
After watching him perform so many miracles, they probably were just sure he'd do a miracle. You know what I mean?
That's
Yeah.
a
Knock
thought.
these guys down. They already
Be like the guy on the cross with
fell
him.
down, and take care of them or something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's hard to.
But you're God, why don't you just save yourself?
Yeah.
They came with weapons, so they had intention
They
to
had intentions.
fight or to whatever they were going to do. So let's take a look at Mark and then Luke. Mark says, am I leading a rebellion, said Jesus, that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I was with you, teaching in the temple courts, and you did not arrest me, but the scriptures must be fulfilled. In other words, what's he saying there?
It's got to happen.
So in other words, there's no reason for you to do this, but the scriptures, we're going to fulfill the scriptures here. Then everyone deserted him and fled. A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. Now, why did Mark include that? I don't know. That's a funny thing to include, isn't it?
Yeah, it is,
It's
but
probably
it
a-
shows you, I think, how desperate the situation really was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you were just gonna escape no matter how you had to do it.
Yeah.
Fled naked,
I mean,
leaving his
naked,
garment
who cares?
behind.
Let me go.
With a fire, I mean,
I'm out of here.
I'm
you
out
had
of here,
A
yep.
teenager in a fire one time, and he had to run out in the street totally naked. He was in the shower.
Oh, no.
And that had to be tough, but you cover him as soon as you can.
Right, right,
Yeah.
But he
right.
had no choice.
Luke 22:52 says, Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come to him, am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, and you did not lay a hand on me. But this is your hour when darkness reigns. So in Luke, in other words, this evil thing you are doing to an innocent man, you have to do in the darkness of night.
Sure.
That's when evil is done, to
Yes.
try to be out of sight of the crowds. In the verse before that, he specifically, who is the person in verse 51, where it says, where is it at? There it is.
Luke?
When the man stepped forward, seized the wrist, and without one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword and drew out and struck the ear. Who was that?
I mean, Peter did that, but,
Peter did that. So
but John
in-
knew the guy.
in Mark's account, his anonymity may suggest it was John Mark. Some people think it was John Mark. that ran away naked. I'm sorry, not the one that hit his ear, but who is it that ran naked? Some think that it was John Mark because he didn't say who it was. The outer garment is made of wool. The linen garment left behind in the hand of a guard indicates the youth was from a wealthy family. Jesus protested the manner of his arrest. The crowd sent by the Sanhedrin had come after him as if he were a dangerous criminal or an insurrectionist. Mark 14:49 says, but the scriptures must be fulfilled, referring to Zechariah 13:7, since Jesus quotes a portion in Mark 14:27, or it could be Isaiah 53. Either one, he's referring to the prophecy there. So some people think the one who ran away naked was John Mark, because of how Mark writes his part, but we don't know. Here's that Zechariah passage. Do you think this is what Jesus was referring to? Awake, sword against my shepherd, against the man who is close to me, declares the Lord Almighty. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered, and I will turn my hand against the little ones. I don't know. Here's the other one, Isaiah 53. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain, like one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him in low esteem. Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering. Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted. Was he really punished by God? We almost see it that way, huh? But it's just the way we're seeing it. See.
That's the way those other people see it.
But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by whose wounds we were healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearer is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. Yet who of his generation protested? For he was cut off from the land of the living. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. Though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth, yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life an offering for sin, he will see his offspring and prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. After he has suffered, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, by righteous servant, will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. Therefore I will give him a portion among the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong, because he poured out his life unto death. So some think that's what he was referring to. So then we have the arrest, the trial, the crucifixion, and burial of Jesus. This first part is kind of starting Friday before dawn. And John, we're going to go back to John chapter 18. And again, there are going to be gaps in the John story because we're skipping the Peter part. We're going to do Peter all at one time. So John 18, verse 12. Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. They bound him. Now, why did they bind him?
He was a dangerous criminal, a flight risk.
He was telling them, put your sticks down, I'm going to go with you, right? Yeah. They bound him and brought him first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jewish leaders that it would be good if one man died for the people. What does that mean, if one man died for the people?
Instead of the whole country going.
Yeah.
These people are getting all riled up and rebellious. As if we just make an example of this one guy, it'll settle everything down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when they bound him, why did they bind him? We don't know why.
Looks.
It might have just been their standard procedure, like it's modern day handcuffs. You know, if you arrest somebody, you got to handcuff them. So in verse 12 and 13, only in John do Roman soldiers and their commander accompany the temple guards to arrest Jesus. and they take him first to Annas. Annas is the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest. So the Roman legate Quirinius appointed Annas high priest in AD 6, and Annas served until AD 15, when he was deposed by the Roman procurator Valerius Gratus. That was in 15 to 26 AD. Pontius Pilate's predecessor. Nonetheless, Annas continued as one of the Jews' most influential and savvy politicians, wielding influence through his 5 sons and his son-in-law, Caiaphas, who were puppet high priests, with Annas pulling the strings. Annas had been deposed from the high priesthood by the Romans in AD 15, but was probably still regarded by many as the true high priest. In Jewish law, no one could be sentenced on the day their trial was held. The 2 examinations, this one mentioned only by John, and the one before Caiaphas, may have been conducted to give some form of legitimacy to what was being done. So Caiaphas had advised the Jewish leaders. That means that's a reference to 1149 to 50. For John, it was his unconscious prophecy that mattered most about Caiaphas. John may also have been hinting that a fair trial could not be expected from a man who had already said that putting Jesus to death was expedient. So if he's making these statements like this, that's why he's letting us know he said that, is to show that it's not really legal, not really that Christ had broken any rules. Verse 8.
Lawfare.
Yeah, lawfare. That's exactly right. So John 18, verse 19. Meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. I have spoken openly to the world, Jesus replied. I always taught in synagogues or at the temple where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said. That's not legal, since the witnesses were supposed to be brought in first to establish guilt. The accused were not required to prove their innocence. Maybe Annas just regarded this as a preliminary inquiry, not a trial. Nothing is being done in secret. It's not a denial. He taught the disciples privately, but a denial that he had secretly taught them submissive teaching different from the public message. In other words, he had taught them privately the same message that he was giving to the public. And it wasn't like he was back there trying to figure out a way to get rid of Caiaphas or to do something against them. The NIV Study Bible makes this point about the legality of Jesus' trials, and I just thought that you might find it interesting. So this is that the trials mentioned in John 18:19 to 24 were not really legal. Judged by Mishnaic law, the Gospels' accounts of Jesus contain numerous illegalities. Jewish officials were not to hold trials either at night or during festivals. That was both on this occasion. They could not reach a verdict that called for the death sentence within 1 day. The accused was to be permitted counsel for the defense.
He didn't have it.
The testimony against Jesus was too meager and unsubstantiated to hold up, and the attempts to secure false witnesses were directly contrary to law. As a result, critics complain that the gospel accounts must be riddled with errors. Replies to this complaint, do you understand what he's saying there? The NIV Study Bible writers, whoever the authors are saying that critics complain that the gospel accounts must be wrong because that was against the law to do it that way. Replies to this complaint have included the observations that many of the Mishnah laws codified about AD 200 were not yet in force in Jesus' day, that some of them do not apply to the Sanhedrin, the Jewish high court, but to lower local courts, and that desperate people often violate the law when they can seize a moment to do their dirty work.
Well, we know they do that.
Yeah, we've seen it in our lifetime.
On the other hand, the details of the Gospels do fit the circumstance of what was permitted in trying an accused seducer of the people, someone who taught heresy and led the people astray. Jesus was not convicted by the Sanhedrin for claiming he would destroy the temple. That was a false charge, nor even for acknowledging he was Messiah, a true charge, but for claiming to be the heavenly Son of Man, prophesied in Daniel. Now, isn't that interesting? They were offended that he was claiming to be the Son of Man, which was out of Daniel. Luke's account of an abbreviated trial at daybreak may have reflected the need under the law to come to a verdict during the daytime, repeating the more informal night proceedings. It's kind of interesting, huh? How things were not done the way they were
Sneaky and
supposed to be.
underhanded.
Yes, sneaky and underhanded is right. So let's stop there. We'll start at John 18:22 the next time. So what do you think this tells us? What do you think that we learn from this? Like if we were going to say, listening to what's happening to Christ and what's happening with his disciples, what is our takeaway for this?
Repeat that?
What's our lesson learned? What is it we take away from this as Christians? What does this teach us? What does it help us? What does it help us to know?
Why Christ came to earth.
Well,
For one reason.
prophecy would be fulfilled, and he knew the end from the beginning. So, he knew how it was going to end up, and he just submitted to it. I mean, they didn't take him or take his life; he gave it.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Does he seem afraid?
No,
I don't know why he's not afraid. Yuck.
yeah,
That just shows you how much God loves us.
it had to be.
What he go through for us.
It had to be hurtful, though, to have his friends and everybody desert him at that time. Nobody coming to his defense.
It feels almost like he's taking the lead on making sure things happen decently in a proper order. Then they put handcuffs on him, and it's like he's the one being mature, or he's the one being thoughtful about this, and everyone else is,
It's just getting him.
hyped up.
Yeah.
They come with their torches and their weapons and all of that, and Jesus, calm down, come on.
Yeah, I mean, he knows.
Like the
He
Salem
knows
witch
what's-
trials or something.
Yeah.
He knows what the end result is,
Mhm.
and let's be peaceable
And it was
about it.
time, and he knew it was time.
Yeah,
And so he just submitted, let's just do it. I'll do this.
We saw him in agony, though.
Yes.
But when was
Yes.
Yeah, human body, you can feel pain.
the night before.
that? It was the night before, right? When he
Yeah.
was praying, when he
Yeah.
and all this time he did the instruction, and then all this time of prayer. 3 times he steps away to pray, right? So he is agonizing over this. It's
And
not
he's
like it was.
bleeding. Yeah, sweating blood.
You knew ahead of time what you would have to go through like he did. That kind of.
I think the torture part.
I would
Even
be.
though when
As
you
a
die,
human.
You know you're going to heaven.
I would have a hard time. That would be very difficult for me.
I know, and some of the persecuted Christians have to deal with similar stuff. I mean, they know that they're going to be tortured or whatever. And,
So, do we have any